Dear friends, welcome to this 2 o'clock portion of our day-long retreat. This is the segment where I would be speaking in particular about meditation itself. The theme for this day is about seeing the uncreated, the unconditioned, Nibbana. And the theory that I want to, that I've based today on is that all the way down to the most subtle aspects of thinking and perceiving, whenever we are thinking in relationship to oneself, that's creating a blockage to being able to see the ultimate reality, to be able to see the uncreated, to experience Nibbana. And the skillful means to go in the right direction towards our goal of liberation is to disappear the concept of self, to disappear the delusion of self, to make the natural inborn habit of this constant arising or depending on the self is the cause of both the cause of our problems and also the most fruitful, direct, and attainable way to move our minds in the right direction. The Buddha said that all conditions are impermanent, unstable, and unreliable. Seeing this is enough to become disillusioned, dispassionate, and free regarding all the conditions. I'm putting the sutta citations so that you can refer to them later. Elsewhere, the Buddha said, the perception of impermanence, that's anicca sanya, perceiving impermanence. When the perception of impermanence is developed and cultivated, it breaks up all sensual lust. It breaks up all lust for existence. It breaks up all ignorance. And it uproots and completely destroys the conceit, I am. So this is the power of the perception of impermanence in our progress on the path. This is in the Anicca Sanya Sutta. There's 2 levels of this self-delusion. One is the what's called Sakkaya Ditthi, which is where we have the belief, and we take it on as a kind of almost like an ideology or a concept, a very explicit concept that is identifying and finding the self in any one of the five khandhas. So if we think that the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the intentions, or the consciousness itself, the conscious awareness, if we think that any, all, or the combination of those things is really the me, that is myself, that's one of the first fetters or blockages that we have to overcome in order to get onto the noble path. And then with the giving up of sensual craving, the giving up of aversion, the giving up of the desire for different levels of existence, the giving up of restlessness, one of the very last and most refined fetters or blockages that a person would be giving up before they come to their full awakening would be what's called this conceit, I am. And this is just a subtle assumption that we have, even if we don't really believe it. Still, naturally, the mind works this way. And it's as if I'm the one who's getting out of bed, I'm the one who's having lunch, I'm the one who's sitting for meditation, and so forth. And that too ultimately disappears. And how to make it disappear? By cultivating the perception of impermanence. I'll give you one more quotation that proves that the Buddha recommended developing this perception of impermanence. He said, when one perceives impermanence, the perception of non-self is stabilized. One who perceives non-self eradicates the conceit, I am. And this is Nibbana in this very life. That statement is so important. I can give you 3 different suttas where you find the same identical sutta. So we see this again and again. It may be relatively easy to understand, at least intellectually, to understand that the body is impermanent, that the body ages and becomes ill and will not last forever. And then gradually to develop a more stoic kind of an attitude, that one would not be mentally or emotionally disturbed by the different vagaries that can happen to the body. And likewise, it's not too difficult for people to see that emotions are impermanent. And then seeing how quickly they come and go. Or even if the emotions seem to be sort of like a recurring, if one is in a strong mood where there's a strong tendency, whether it's towards joy and happiness or towards grief and sorrow, if there's or towards anger, if there's a strong emotional habit, the same kind of emotion could be coming up again and again, could be very easily triggered again and again by possibly by thinking about the same kinds of thoughts over and over again. But even when one is in a deep emotional groove, you still can experience that the emotions are not always going on the same way at the same intensity with quite the same color. Instead, they are actually continuously changing. Even as you could say, if there was a skunk in the room and you smelled a very strong, unpleasant smell, if you were stuck in the room next to the skunk, eventually the receptors in the nose that are activated by the aroma of the skunk will become exhausted, and then those receptors will stop functioning, and you'll stop having the perception of that unpleasant smell. So just the same way, just because of impermanence, no emotional state goes on and on without changing forever. It's always changing. Thoughts are even more unstable than the body, more unstable than emotions. You could say that, well, the body will only live for a certain number of years. If you have a full lifespan, your body might last for 80 or 100 years or something like that, but it won't last much over 100, no matter what. So we know the body's impermanent. And then the emotions don't really stay the same for an hour at a time. Emotions are coming from a combination of physical things happening in the body, like the activation of the nerves and the different hormones and so forth that are pumped into the body. So if you got a very pleasant feeling and endorphins are in your bloodstream because of that pleasant feeling, if nothing else happens, it will be normal for those endorphins to still be in the bloodstream for almost a minute. And so just all by itself, there's a certain tendency for emotions to last at least a minute or at least a few seconds. But then thoughts can be much more fleeting than that, much more momentary than that. So the thoughts are the most impermanent of all. But there's a certain kind of thought where we can come into a delusion about permanence. And that will be, could be what you call a concept. When we mistake the sign for the reality. So if you see a crow, the sign of the crow is that it's black, it's of a particular size, it has a particular kind of a call, and it has a particular kind of way that it flies. And then it has a particular shape of its tail. If you see a raven, the raven is also black, but the raven has a different kind of voice. It has a different kind of tail, and it has a different kind of a flight pattern. And so based on seeing the sign, one could make the conclusion, oh, that's a crow or that's a raven. Or one could make the conclusion based on a sign, this is my friend, this is my enemy. This is the kind of person I like, this is the kind of person I don't like. The sign is always a very small part of the whole picture. It's not the entirety of the reality that exists at a particular moment. In Western philosophy, there's an idea about what's called a Platonic Ideal. I think, I guess Plato or Aristotle, representing Plato, said that there are ideal concepts which are eternal and always true. So there is an ideal of what a chair is. And then any actual physical chair that you could encounter is a partial or imperfect manifestation of the ideal chair. And so then in this idea of Platonic ideals, there is this imagined to be a whole universe of invisible but permanent and perfect realities which always exist. In Buddhism, we don't think like that. In Buddhism, we could say that what one might experience as a chair is the result of an encounter with a certain physical object, which one could encounter through the eye by seeing or through touch by sitting on it. And then there is the internal faculty, the seeing faculty or the touching faculty. Then there is a perception, which is coming into the mentality that has some previous knowledge about what a chair is and what a chair is good for. And the meeting of the sensory experience with the perception, one would realize that it's a chair. And then based on that, could arise the intention, the volitional faculty. Oh, it's a chair, I know what to do with it. This chair is for me to sit on or for me to offer a seat to somebody. And then overarching or going over all of this is the consciousness, which in this case, I'm going to consider, this is in terms of the aggregates of experience, that this consciousness is the knowing faculty which is directed towards something. In Western philosophy, this is called intentionality. So the awareness is focused on something. So it could be that a few minutes before I got into this particular paragraph, you were not, a chair was not in your mind whatsoever. You were not thinking about chair. But since I started speaking about it, then your consciousness came to be directed towards the idea of a chair that you hold in your mind, or the memory of a chair, or perhaps an actual chair that you have in your room, and you started attending to that, directing the consciousness towards that. And so all of these things coming together is all wrapped up together in the experience of what a chair is. Whatever we are doing when we have this kind of experience, which is based on responding to a sign of something, it's that quality by which we recognize it. If we identify with that, we've already begun to go away from the full reality of it. We're taking a part of it, and we could be mistaking that part of it for the whole of it. We used to have birds nesting under the eave of our monastery, and without wishing to harm the birds or deprive them of their home. Nevertheless, it was a problem for us because they would make the nest and have babies several times a year, and there was a lot of bird poo on the sidewalk, just in a place that we needed to use the sidewalk. And so we wanted to discourage the bird, and we got a poster, a sign, which is called the scary eye. It's like one image of a great big eye that the bird is supposed to perceive as being an owl, because the typical forward-facing eyes of the owl are the feature of the owl that the small birds are programmed to recognize. And when they recognize that, then they have the instinctive programming to say danger, danger, and to go away from that place. And so in so many ways, when we are responding to signs, I think it's very important to realize that this recognizing things by their sign is what comes naturally to us in terms of action. It's not just that the signs come to us because we're a philosopher standing in, or resting in perfect stillness, contemplating reality, and then we contemplate about signs. Instead, the way that we experience signs is that the signs are causing us to crystallize a volitional formation, a decision or an understanding. This is what I can do about this. And with that volitional formation, when it's supported by the self view of protecting the self, promoting the self, getting more life for this self, then invariably we're going to do the type of actions that keep on perpetuating our ignorance, keep on perpetuating our suffering, keep on moving us along the wheel of samsara. So concepts seem to be permanent, but they're not permanent. They're just something that arose because of the coming together of the five khandhas. So what I'm going to do now is suggest that we come and do a meditation on the, I'll say breath meditation, but within the breath meditation, I'm going to guide you to direct the awareness to notice the form, the feeling, the perception, the intention, and the consciousness that's arising as aspects of the breath meditation. And then to look and see, is it permanent or impermanent? You can say impermanent, Venerable Sir. You can say, is it stable or unstable? Unstable, Bhante. Is it reliable or unreliable? Unreliable. And then after doing this meditation, looking into inquiring about the impermanence of the five aggregates, then I would suggest you could try going through the rest of this afternoon, trying to just be really alert and aware and seeing whether you can notice what's permanent or what's impermanent, to see to what extent you can make the mind to be more stabilized on the perception of impermanence. Yeah. So coming to a meditation posture. Arranging the body, whether on the chair or the cushion, in a way which is upright and balanced. In a posture that's as comfortable as possible, so that you can, as much as possible, keep the body still for the next half hour. And with the eyes closed, be aware of the physical body itself, the weight of the body, the size of the body. The upright orientation of the body, the balance, the position of the body in the room. Feeling the touch points where the seat is touching the chair or the cushion. The feet or legs on the floor or the cushion. The hands touching. And going within the body, aware of any tension or tightness, especially in the face, and letting that relax. Relaxing the shoulders, relaxing the belly. Anything else in the body that's tight or activated or jumpy, methodically relaxing those things, coming to rest. And within this body, Noticing the rise and fall of the breath, or the in-breath and out-breath. Aware of which part of the body the breath is felt clearly, whether at the nose or the nostril, at the chest, at the belly, wherever the breath is clear. Paying attention to the body right there. It's primarily touching. The touch faculty. How the body can be known. And without losing that, keep the mind connected with the touch sensation, with the rise and fall of breath. And then aware of the feeling that accompanies this touch. Pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. If it's pleasant, we like it. We're content to stay there, resting in awareness on the breath. The pleasant feeling can wander off into daydreams, trying to let it stay just there with the feeling, just at the touch of breath. If it's unpleasant, could be we don't like it. We don't want to settle down in meditation. We'd rather do something else. And the mind can be restless in a different way when there's unpleasant feeling. But with training, even if the breath is unpleasant, even if it's boring, even if it's not what we wanted, we can still patiently stay with the breath. If the feeling is neutral, there's a stability there. Appreciating that calmness of neutral feeling. Keeping enough energy to stay with the breath. Without letting go of breath, aware of the perception that's happening, the in-breath, the out-breath, the pause. The mind is recognizing the in-breath, the out-breath, and the pause. If some other sensation comes into awareness, like hearing something, there can be a perception, hearing, this is hearing. And then returning awareness to the breath. With the perception, breathing in, breathing out, and the pause. and aware of the intention, the volition that's present. We intend to practice meditation. We intend to keep our awareness on the rise and fall of breath. It's possible to breathe intentionally, breathe in long on purpose, breathe out long on purpose. And then let go of that intention. Let the body just breathe by itself, just intending to watch it. And if awareness wanders away from the breath, recognize the intention, the choice for the mind to go somewhere else. Or if the mind is staying on the breath, or returning to the breath, noticing it as an intention to stay and to return. And aware of consciousness. The mind is awake and aware, not in a coma. The consciousness directed to the breath, directed to the rise and fall, directed to feeling, perception, and intention, to notice those aspects of the breath, those aspects of meditation. And within all of it, look and see, is the breath just one thing? Or is it always changing? is the feeling, the perception, the volition, the awareness, are they always the same? Are they constantly flowing and changing? Is any part of it reliable? Is any part of it permanent? Is all of it always changing? And just staying with that, staying as still, as constant, as consistent as we can. And no matter how stable our meditation, still discovering the impermanence within that. gently emerging from this brief meditation. But if you have time to continue meditating this afternoon, don't come out too far. You can return and go on for another period of meditation on your own. With this theme of meditation, you can see that in meditation, there is intention, there is a direction. The awareness is directed towards the object. The intention is to stay with the meditation object and with the process. But there's one factor that can be disappearing, and that is the self-conceit about it. So once you've thought about the meditation idea and use this directed awareness to be able to notice what you're investigating in the meditation, then you can let go of the so much effort about it, so much intention in a sort of explicit sense of being busy, and it's like having a supervisor of the meditation inside the teacher or the school mom who's saying, now mind do this, now mind do that, now mind do this, now mind do that. So then you set a pattern and then just relax and let the mind be calm and see what the mind does. And then become much more like the quiet, peaceful observer, not the one who's trying to supervise, direct, and control. And in this way, the self-centered or the selfish side of meditation can sort of drop away and fall away. I'm going to bring the YouTube portion of this session to a close then, and invite the listeners to